Good evening, my friends. It's Indiana Holmes, and we continue with story time tonight. The Maltese Falcon. We are now up to chapter 10. So we continue. The Belvedere Divan. Beginning day had reduced night to a thin smokiness when Spade sat up. At his side, Bridget O'Shaughnessy, soft, breathing, had the regularity of utter sleep. Spade was quiet, leaving the bed and the bedroom, and shutting the bedroom door. He dressed in the bathroom. Then he examined the sleeping girl's clothes, took a flat brass key from the pocket of her coat, and went out. He went to the coronet, letting himself into the building and into her apartment with the key. To the eye, there was nothing furtive about his going in. He entered boldly, directly. To the ear, his going in was almost unnoticeable. He made as little sound as might be. In the girl's apartment, he switched on all the lights. He searched the place from wall to wall. His eyes and thick fingers moved without apparent haste, and without even lingering or fumbling or going back from 1 inch of their fields to the next, probing, scrutinizing, testing, with expert certainty, every drawer, cupboard, cubbyhole, box, bag, trunk, locked or unlocked, was opened and its contents subjected to examination by eyes and fingers. Every piece of clothing was tested by hands that felt for telltale bulges and ears that listened for the crinkle of paper between pressing. He stripped the bed of bedclothes, all the sheets taken off. He looked under the rugs, and under each side of each piece of furniture. He pulled down blinds to see if nothing had been rolled up in them for concealment. He leaned through windows to see nothing hung below them or outside them. He poked with a fork into powder and cream jars on dressing tables. He held atomizers and bottles up against the light. He examined dishes and pans and food containers. He emptied the garbage can on a spread sheet of newspaper. He opened the top of the flush box in the bathroom, drained the box, and peered down into it. He examined and tested the metal screens over the drains of the bathtubs, washbowls, sink, and laundry tub. He did not find the black bird. He found nothing that seemed to have any connection with the black bird. The only piece of writing he found was a week-old receipt for a month's apartment rent that Bridget O'Shaughnessy had paid. The only thing he found that interested him enough to delay his search while he looked at it was a double handful of rather fine jewelry in a polychrome box in a locked dressing table drawer. When he had finished, he made and drank a cup of coffee. Then he unlocked the kitchen window, scarred the edge of its lock a little with his pocket knife, opened the window over a fire escape, got his hat and overcoat from the settee in the living room, and left the apartment as he had come. On his way home, he stopped at a store that was being opened by a puffy-eyed, shivering plump grocer, and bought oranges, eggs, rolls, butter, and cream. Spade went quietly into his apartment, but before he had shut the corridor door behind him, Bridget O'Shaughnessy cried, "Who's that?" Young Spade, bearing breakfast. "Oh, you frightened me." The bedroom door he had shut was open. The girl sat on the side of the bed, trembling, with her right hand out of sight under a pillow. Spade put his packages on the kitchen table and went into the bedroom. He sat on the bedside, right next to the girl, kissed her smooth shoulder, and said, "I wanted to see if the kid was still on the job and get stuff for breakfast." "Is he?" "No." She sighed and leaned against him. "I awakened, and you weren't here, and I then heard someone coming in. I was terrified." Spade combed her red hair back from her face with his fingers and said, "I'm sorry, Angel. I thought you'd sleep right through it. Did you have that gun under the pillow all night?" "No. You know I didn't. I jumped up and got it when I was frightened." He cooked breakfast and slipped the flat brass key into her coat pocket again while she bathed and dressed. She came out of the bathroom whistling In Cuba. "Shall I make the bed?" she asked. "That'd be swell. The eggs need a couple of minutes more anyway." Their breakfast was on the table, and she returned to the kitchen. They sat where they had sat the night before and ate heartily. "Now, about that bird," Spade suggested presently as they ate. She put her fork down and looked at him. She drew her eyebrows together and made her mouth small and tight. "You can't ask me to talk about that this morning, of all mornings," she protested. "I don't want to, and I won't." "It's a stubborn damn hussy," he said sadly, and put a piece of roll into his mouth. The youth who had shadowed Spade was not in sight when Spade and Bridget O'Shaughnessy crossed the sidewalk to the waiting taxicab. The taxicab was not followed. Neither the youth nor the loiterer was visible in the vicinity of Coronet when the taxicab arrived there. Bridget O'Shaughnessy would not let Spade go in with her. It's bad enough to be coming home in the evening dress at this hour without bringing company. I hope I don't meet anybody. "Dinner tonight?" "Yes." They kissed. She went into the Coronet. He told the chauffeur, "Hotel Belvedere." When he reached the Belvedere, he saw the youth who had shadowed him sitting in the lobby on a divan, from which the elevators could be seen. Apparently, the youth was reading a newspaper. At the desk, Spade learned that Cairo was not in. He frowned and pinched his lower lip. Points of yellow light began to dance in his eyes. "Thanks," he said softly to the clerk, and turned away. Sauntering, he crossed the lobby to the divan, to which the elevators could be seen, and sat down beside, not more than a foot from the young man, who was apparently reading a newspaper. The young man did not look up from the newspaper. Seen at this scant distance, he seemed certainly less than 20 years old. His features were small, in keeping with his stature, and regular. His skin was very fair. The whiteness of his cheeks was as a little blurred by any considerable growth of beard as by the glow of blood. His clothing was neither new nor more than ordinary quality, but it, and his manner of wearing it, was marked by a hard masculine neatness. Spade asked casually, "Where is she? Where is he?" While shaking tobacco down into a brown paper curve to catch it, the boy lowered the paper and looked around, moving with a purposeful sort of slowness, as of a more natural swiftness restrained. He looked with small hazel eyes under somewhat long curling lashes at Spade's chest. He said in a voice as colorless and composed and cold as his young face could manage, "What?" "Where is he?" Spade was busy with his cigarette. "Who?" "The fairy." The hazel eyes gazed one up Spade's chest to the knot in his macaroon tie and rested there. "What do you think you're doing, Jack?" the boy demanded. "Kidding me? I'll tell you when I'm done telling you. And that's when I'll tell you if I'm kidding or not." Spade licked his cigarette and smiled amiably at the boy. "New York, aren't you?" The boy stared at Spade's tie and did not speak. Spade nodded as if the boy said yes and asked, "Bombs rush." The boy stared at Spade's tie for a moment longer and then raised the newspaper and returned his attention to it. "Shove off," he said from the side of his mouth. Spade lighted his cigarette, leaned back comfortably on the divan, and spoke with good-natured carelessness. "You'll have to talk to me before you're through, Sonny. Some of you will, and you can tell G.I. said so." The boy put his paper down quickly and faced Spade, staring at his necktie with his bleak hazel eyes. The boy's small hands were spread flat over his belly. "Keep asking for it, and you're going to get it," he said. "Plenty." His voice was low and flat and menacing. "I told you to shove off. Shove off." Spade waited until the bespectacled pudgy man and a thin-legged blonde girl had passed out of hearing. Then he chuckled and said, That would go over big back on 7th Street, but you're not in Romeville now. You're in my burg." He inhaled the cigarette smoke and blew it out in a long, pale cloud. "Well, where is he?" The boy spoke 2 words, the first in a short guttural verb, the second, "You." People lose teeth talking like that. Spade's voice was still amiable, though his face had become wooden. "If you want to hang around, you'll be polite." The boy repeated his 2 words. Spade dropped his cigarette into the tall stone jar beside the divan, and with a lifted hand caught the attention of a man who had been standing at the end of the cigarette stand for several minutes. The man nodded and came towards them. He was a middle-aged man of medium height, round and sallow face, compactly built, tidily dressed in dark clothes. "Hello, Sam," he said as he came up. "Hello, Luke." They shook hands, and Luke said, "Say, that's too bad about Miles." "Uh-huh, a bad break." Spade jerked his head to indicate the boy on the divan beside him. "What do you let these cheap gunmen hang out in your lobby for, with their tools and bulging in their clothes?" "Yes." Luke examined the boy with crafty eyes and said in a suddenly hard face, "What do you want here?" he asked. The boy stood up. Spade stood up. The boy looked at the 2 men at their neckties. From one to the other, Luke's necktie was black. The boy looked at the schoolboy. The boy looked like a schoolboy standing in front of them. Luke said, "Well, if you don't want anything, beat it, and don't come back." The boy said, "I won't forget you guys," and went out. They watched him go out. Spade took off his hat, wiped his damp forehead with a handkerchief. The hotel detective asked, "What is it?" "Damned if I know," Spade replied. "I just happened to spot him. Know anything about Joel Cairo, 635? "Oh, that one," the hotel detective leered. "How long has he been here?" 4 days. This is the 5th. "What about him?" "Search me, Sam. I got nothing against him but his looks. Find out if he came in last night." "Try to." The hotel detective promised and went away. Spade sat on the divan until he returned. "Nope," Luke reported. "He didn't sleep in his room." "What is it?" "Nothing." "Come clean. You know I'll keep my clams shut. But if there's anything wrong, we ought to know so that we can collect our bill from him." "Nothing like that," Spade assured him. "As a matter of fact, I'm doing a little work for him. I'd tell you if he was wrong." "You better. Want me to kind of keep an eye on him?" "Thanks, Luke. It wouldn't hurt. You can't know too much about men when you're working for him these days." It was 21 minutes past 11 by the clock over the elevator doors when Joel Cairo came in from the street. His forehead was bandaged, his clothes had a limp unfreshness to them, and seemed as if he'd worn them for too many consecutive hours. His face was pasty and sagging mouth with eyelids. Sagging too. Spade met him at the front desk. "Good morning," Spade said easily. Cairo drew his tired body up straight, and drooping lines from his face tightened. "Good morning," he responded without enthusiasm. There was a pause. Spade said, "Let's go someplace where we can talk." Cairo raised his chin. "Excuse me," he said. "Our conversations in private have not been such that I am anxious to continue them. Pardon my speaking bluntly, but it is the truth." "You mean last night?" Spade made an impatient gesture with his head in his hands. "What in the hell else could I do? I thought you'd see that. If you picked a fight with her, or let her pick one with you, I've got to throw in with her, you know? I don't know where that damn bird is. You don't. She does. How in the hell are we going to get it if I don't play along with her?" Cairo hesitated, said dubiously, "You have always, I must say, a smooth explanation for basically everything ready at hand." Spade scowled. "What do you want me to do? Learn to stutter? Well, we can't talk over here." We led the way to the divan. When they were seated, he asked, Dundee take you down to the hall? Yes. How long did they work on you? Until a very little while ago, and very much against my will. Pain and indignation were mixed in Cairo's face and voice. I shall certainly take the matter up with the Consulate General of Greece and with my attorney. Go ahead and see what that gets you. What did you let the police shake out of you? There was a prim satisfaction in Cairo's smile. Not a single thing. I adhered to the course you indicated earlier in your rooms. His smile went away. Though I certainly wished you had devised a more reasonable story, I felt decidedly ridiculous repeating it. Spade grinned mockingly. Sure, he said, but its goofiness is what makes it good. You sure you didn't give up anything? You may rely on it, Mr. Spade. I did not. Spade drummed with his fingers on his leather seat between them. You'll be hearing from Dundee again. Stay dummied up on him and you'll be all right. Don't worry about the story's goofiness. A sensible one would be have gotten us probably all put in the cooler. He rose to his feet. You want to sleep if you've been standing up under a police storm all night. See you later. Effie Perrine was saying, "No, not yet," into the telephone when Spade entered his office. She looked around at him, and her lips shaped a silent word, Iva. He shook his head. Yes, I'll have to call him as soon as he comes in. I'll have him call you as soon as he comes in, she said, aloud, and replaced the receiver on its prong. That's the third time she's called up this morning, she told Spade. He made an impatient growling noise. The girl moved her brown eyes to indicate the inner office. Your Miss O'Shaughnessy's in there. She's been waiting since a few minutes after 9. Spade nodded as if he expected that and asked, what else? Sergeant Paulus called up. He didn't leave any message. Get him for me. And G. And G? Yeah, G called up. Spade's eyes brightened. He asked, who? G. That's what he said. Her air of impersonal indifference to the subject was flawless. When I told him that you weren't in, he said, when he comes in, will you tell him that G, who got his message, phoned and will phone again? Spade worked his lips together as if tasting something he liked. Thanks, darling, he said. See if you can't get Tom Paulus on the phone. He opened the inner door and went in, pulling the door behind him. Bridget O'Shaughnessy, dressed as on her first visit to the office, rose from the chair beside the desk and came towards him. Somebody has been in my apartment, she explained. It's all upside down, every which way. He seemed moderately surprised. Anything taken? I don't think so. I don't know. I was afraid to stay. I changed as fast as I could and I came down here. Oh, you mustn't let that boy follow you here. Spade shook his head. No, Angel. He took an early copy of an afternoon paper from his pocket, opened it, and showed her a quarter column that read, Scream Routs Burglar. A young woman named Caroline Beale, who lived alone in Sutter Street apartment, had been awakened at 4 a.m. by the sound of somebody moving in her bedroom. She had screamed. The mover ran away. 2 other women who had lived alone in the same building had discovered later in the morning signs of a burglar having visited their apartments. Nothing had been taken from any of the 3. That's where I shook him, Spade explained. I went into that building and ducked out the back door. That's why all 3 women who lived alone were there. He tried the apartments that had the women's names in the vestibule register, hunting for you under an alias. But he was watching your place when we were there, she objected. Spade shrugged. There's no reason to think he wasn't working alone. Or maybe he went to Sutter Street after he had begun to think that you were going to stay all night in my place. There are a lot of maybes, but it didn't lead him to the coronet. She wasn't satisfied. But he found it, or somebody did. Sure. He frowned at her feet. I wonder if it could have been Cairo. He wasn't at his hotel all night. Didn't get in till a few minutes ago. He told me he had been standing up under a police grilling all night. I wonder. He turned open the door and asked Effie Perrine, "Got Tom yet?" "He's not in. I'll try again in a few minutes." "Thanks." Spade shut the door and faced Bridget O'Shaughnessy. She looked up at him with cloudy eyes. "You went to see Joe this morning?" she asked. "Yes." She hesitated. "Why?" "Why?" He smiled, looked down at her. "Because, my own true love, I've got to keep in sort of touch with all those loose ends of this dizzy affair if I'm ever going to make heads or tails of it." He put an arm around her shoulder and led her over to a swivel chair. He kissed the tip of her nose lightly and set her down on the chair. He sat on the desk in front of her. He said, "Now, we've got to find a new home for you, haven't we?" She nodded with emphasis. "I won't go back there." He patted the desk beside his thighs and made a thoughtful face. "I think I've got it," he said presently. "Wait a minute." He went into the outer office, shutting the door. Effie Perrine reached for the telephone, saying, "I'll try." Afterwards, "Does your woman's intuition still tell you that she's a Madonna or something?" She looked sharply at him. "I still believe that no matter what kind of trouble she's gotten into, she's all right, if that's what you mean." "That's what I mean," he said. Are you strong enough for her to give you a lift?" "How?" "Could you put her up for a few days?" "You mean at my home?" "Yes. Her joint's been broken into. That's the second burglary she's had all week. It'll be better for her if she wasn't alone. It would help a lot if you could take her in." Effie Perrine leaned down, asking earnestly, "Is she really in danger, Sam?" "I think she is." She scratched her lip with a fingernail. "That would scare Ma into the green hemorrhage. I'll have to tell her she's a surprise witness or something, that you're keeping her under cover till the last minute." "You're a darling," Spade said. "Better take her out there now. I'll get her key from her and bring whatever she needs over from her apartment. Let's see, you oughtn't to be leaving here together. You go home now, take a taxi, but make sure you aren't followed. You probably won't be, but let's just make sure. I'll send her out in another little while, making sure she isn't followed." Chapter 11. The Fat Man. The telephone bell was ringing when Spade returned to his office after sending Bridget O'Shaughnessy off to Effie Perrine's house. He went to the telephone. "Hello?" "Yes, this is Spade." "Yes, I got it." "I've been waiting to hear from you." "Who?" "Mr. Gutman." "Oh, yes, sure. Now, the sooner the better. 12C, right? Say 15 minutes, right?" Spade sat on the corner of his desk beside the telephone and rolled a cigarette. His mouth was hard and complacent. His eyes, watching his fingers make the cigarette, smoldered over lower lids drawn up tight. The door opened, and Iva Archer came in. Spade said, "Hello, honey," in a voice as lightly amiable as his face had suddenly become. "Oh, Sam, forgive me," she cried in a choked voice. She stood just inside the door, waiting a black-bordered handkerchief in her small gloved hand, peering into his face with frightened, red, swollen eyes. He did not get up from his seat on the desk at the corner. He said, "Sure, that's all right, forget it." "But Sam," she wailed, "I sent those policemen there. I was mad, crazy with jealousy, and I phoned them that if they'd go there, they'd learn something about Miles' murder." "What made you think that?" "Oh, I didn't, but I was mad, Sam. I wanted you to hurt. It made things damn awkward." He put his arm around her and drew her nearer. "But it's all right now. Only don't get any more crazy notions like that." "I won't," she promised, "ever. But you weren't nice to me last night. You were cold and distant and wanted to get rid of me. And when I had to come down there and waited so long to warn you, and you—" "Warn me about what?" "About Phil. he's found out about you being in love with me, and Miles had told him about my wanting a divorce, though of course he never knew for what. And now Phil thinks you killed his brother because he wouldn't give me the divorce so we could get married. He told me he believed that, and yesterday he went and told the police." "That's nice," Spade said softly. "And you came to warn me, and because I was busy, you got up on your ear and helped this damn Phil Archer stir things up." "I'm sorry," she whimpered. "I know you won't forgive me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." "You ought to be," he agreed. "On your own account as well as mine. Has Dundee been to see you since Phil had done his talking? Or anybody from the Bureau?" "No." Alarm opened in her eyes and her mouth. "They will," he said. "And it'll be just as well to not let them find you here. Did you tell them who you were and when you phoned?" "Oh, no. I simply told them that if they'd go to your apartment right away, they'd learn something about the murder and hung up." "Where'd you phone from?" "The drugstore above your place." "Oh, Sam, dearest, He patted her shoulder and said pleasantly, "It was a dumb trick, all right, but it's done now. You better run along home and think up things to tell the police. You'll be hearing from them. Maybe it'd be best to say no right across the board." He frowned at something distant. "Or maybe you better see Sid Wise first." He removed his arm from around her, took a card from his pocket, scribbled 3 lines on the back of it, and gave it to her. "You can tell Sid everything," he frowned. "Or almost everything. Where were you the night Miles was shot?" "Home," she replied without hesitating. He shook his head, grinning at her. I was," she insisted. "No," he said, "but if your story, it's all right with me, go see Sid. It's up on the next corner, the pinkish building, room 827. Her blue eyes tried to probe his yellow-gray ones. "What makes you think I wasn't home?" she asked slowly. "Nothing, except that I know you weren't." "But I was. Her lips twisted and anger darkened her eyes. "Effie Perrine told you that," she said indignantly. "I saw her looking at my clothes and snooping around. You know she doesn't like me, Sam. Why do you believe things she tells you when you know she'd do anything to make trouble for me?" "Jesus, you women," Spade said mildly. He looked at a watch on his wrist. "You'll have to trot along, precious. I'm late for an appointment now. You do what you want, but if I were you, I'd tell Sid the truth or nothing. I mean, leave out the parts you don't want to tell him, but don't make up anything else in its place." "I'm not lying to you, Sam," she protested. "Like hell you're not," he said and stood up. She strained on tiptoe to hold her face near to his. "You don't believe me," she whispered. "I don't believe you." "And you won't forgive me for what I did?" "Sure I do." He bent his head and kissed her mouth. "That's all right. Now run along." She put her arms around him. "Won't you go with me to see Mr. Weiss?" "I can't, and I'd only be in the way." He patted her arms and took them from around his body and kissed her left wrist between the glove and the sleeve. He put his hands on her shoulders, turned her to face the door, and released her with a little push. "Beat it," he ordered. The mahogany door of Suite 12C at the Alexandria Hotel was opened by the boy Spade had talked to at the Belvedere lobby. Spade said, "Hello," good-naturedly. The boy did not say anything. He stood aside, holding the door open. Spade went in. A fat man came to meet him. The fat man was flabby, fat, with bulbous pink cheeks and lips and chins and a neck and a great soft egg of a belly that was his whole torso, and a pendant, cones for arms and legs. As he advanced to meet Spade, all his bulbs rose and shook and fell separately with each step, in a manner of clustered soap bubbles not yet released from a pipe through which they had been blown. His eyes, made small by fat puffs around them, were dark and sleek. Dark ringlets thinly covered his broad scalp. He wore a black cutaway coat, black vest, black satin ascot, a tie holding a pinkish pearl, striped gray worsted trousers, and patent leather shoes. His voice was a thorny purr. "Ah, Mr. Spade," he said with enthusiasm as he held out a hand like a fat pink star. Spade took his hand and smiled and said, "How do you do, Mr. Gutton?" Holding Spade's hand, the fat man turned beside him, put his other hand to Spade's elbow, and guided him across a green rug to a green plush chair beside the table that held a siphon, some glasses, a bottle of Johnny Walker whiskey on a tray, and a box of cigars, Coronas del Ritz, 2 newspapers, and a small, plain, yellow soapstone box. Spade sat at the green chair. The fat man began to fill 2 glasses from a bottle and a siphon. The boy had disappeared. Doors set in 3 of the room's walls were shut. The 4th wall behind Spade was pierced by 2 windows looking out over Gary Street. "We begin so well, sir," the fat man purred, turning with a proffered glass in his hand. "I trust my man that says if he's got to be careful not to drink too much, it's because he's not to be trusted when he does." Spade took his glass and, smiling, made the beginning of a bow over it. The fat man raised his glass and held it against the window's light. He nodded approvingly at the bubbles running up it. He said, "Well, sir, here's to a plain speaking and clear understanding." They drank and lowered their glasses. The fat man looked shrewdly at Spade and asked, "You're a closed-mouth man." Spade shook his head. "I like to talk." "Better, better," the fat man exclaimed. "I distrust closed-mouthed men. He generally picks up the wrong time to talk and says the wrong things. Talking is something you can do judiciously, unless you keep in practice." He beamed over his glass. "Well, get along, sir, and then we will." He set his glass on the table and held a box of Coronas del Ritz out to Spade. "A cigar, sir." Spade took the cigar, trimmed the end of it, and lighted it. Meanwhile, the fat man pulled another green plush chair around to face Spade's within convenient distance and placed a smoking hand within reach of both chairs. Then he took his glass from the table, took a cigar from the box, and lowered himself into the chair. His bulbs stopped jouncing and settled into flabby rest. He sighed comfortably and said, "Now, sir, we'll talk if you like. And I'll tell you right out that I'm a man who likes talking to a man who likes to talk." "Swell. We will talk about the black bird." The fat man laughed, and his bulbs rode up and down with his laughter. "Will we?" he asked, and "We will," he replied. His pink face was shiny with delight. "You're the man for me, sir. A man cut along my own lines. No beating about the bush, but right to the point. Will we talk about the blackbird?" "We will. I like that, sir. I like the way of doing business." "Let us talk about the blackbird, by all means. But first, sir, answer me a question, please, though maybe it's an unnecessary one, so we'll understand each other from the beginning. You're here as Miss O'Shaughnessy's representative?" Spade blew smoke out by the fat man's head in a long, slanting plume. He frowned thoughtfully at the ash tipped into the cigar. He replied deliberately, "I can't say yes or no. There's nothing certain about it either way." Yet he looked up at the fat man and stopped frowning. "It depends." "It depends on—" Spade shook his head. "If I knew what it depended on, I could say yes or no." The fat man took a mouthful from his glass, swallowed it, and suggested, "Maybe it depends on Joel Cairo." Spade's prompt maybe was non-committal. he drank. The fat man leaned forward until his belly stopped him. He smiled ingratiatingly, and so was his purring voice. You could say, then, that the question in which one of them you'll represent. You could put it that way. It will be one or the other. I didn't say that. The fat man's eyes glistened. His voice sank into a throaty whisper, asking, Who else is there? Spade pointed his cigar at his own chest. There's me, he said. The fat man sank back into his chair and let his body go flaccid. He blew his breath out in a long, contented gust. That's wonderful, he purred. That's wonderful. I do like a man that tells you right out he's looking out for himself. Don't we all? I don't trust the man that says he's not. And the man that tells the truth when he says he's not, I distrust most of all, because he's an ass, and an ass is going to contrary to the laws of nature. Spade exhaled his smoke. His face was politely attentive. He said, Uh-huh. Now let's talk about the blackbird. The fat man smiled benevolently. Let's, he said. He squinted so that the fat puffs crowding together left nothing of his eyes but dark gleams visible. Mr. Spade, have you any conception of how much can be made out of the blackbird? No? The fat man leaned forward again and put his bloated pink hand in the arm of Spade's chair. Well, sir, if I told you, by gad, if I told you half, would you call me a liar? Spade smiled. No, he said. Not even if I thought it. But if you won't take the risk, just tell me what it is and I'll figure out the profits. The fat man laughed. You couldn't do it. No, sir. Nobody could do that if they hadn't a world of experience with things of that sort. And he paused impressively. There aren't any other things of that sort. His bulbs jostled in another as he laughed. He stopped laughing abruptly. His flesh and lips hung as laughter had left them. He stared at Spade with an inertness that suggested myopia. He asked, You mean you don't know where it is? Amazement took the throatiness out of his voice. Spade made a careless gesture with a cigar. Oh, hell, he said lightly. I know what it's supposed to look like. I know the value of its life. You know the people who put me onto it. I don't know what it is. She didn't tell you. Miss O'Shaughnessy? Yes, a lovely girl, sir. No. The fat man's eyes were darkened gleams and ambushed behind pink puffs of flesh. And she said, indistinctly, She must know. She must know. And Cairo didn't. Cairo is cagey. He's willing to buy it, but he won't risk telling me anything I don't already know. The fat man moistened his lips with his tongue. How much is he willing to buy it for? He asked. $10,000. The fat man laughed scornfully. $10,000 and dollars? Mind you, not even pounds? That's the Greek for you. Huh. And what did you say? I said if I turned it over to him, I'd expect the 10,000. Ah, yes, if nicely put, sir. The fat man's forehead squirmed in flesh-blurred frown. They must know, he said, only partly aloud. Then, do they know what the bird is and what your impression was? I can't tell you there, Spade confessed. There's not much to go by. Cairo didn't say he did or he didn't say what he didn't say. She said she didn't, but I took it for granted that she was lying. That was not an injudicious thing to do, sir, the fat man said, but his mind was obviously not on his words. He scratched his head, frowned until his forehead was marked with red scratches. He fidgeted in his armchair, and as much a surprise as his size was, it was just allowing him just enough room to fidget in the chair. He shut his eyes, opened them suddenly, wide, and said to Spade, "Maybe they don't talk. Maybe they do." His bulbous pink face slowly lost its worrisome frown and then, more quickly, took out an expression of ineffable happiness. "If they don't," he cried, and again, "if they don't, I am the only one in the whole wide world. Sweet world prizes, who does?" Spade drew his lips back in a tight smile. "I'm glad I came to the right place," he said. The fat man smiled too, but somewhat vaguely. Happiness had gone out of his face, though he continued to smile. The caution had come into his eyes. His face was watchful-eyed. Smiling mask held between his thoughts and Spade. His eyes, avoiding Spade's, shifted to the glass at Spade's elbow. His face brightened. "By gad, sir," he said, "your glass is empty." He got up and went out to the table and clattered glasses and siphon and the bottle, mixing the two drinks. Spade was immobile in his chair until the fat man, with a flourish and a jocular, "Ah, sir, this is the kind of medicine that you will never hurt you. Or maybe it will." And he handed him his refilled glass. Then Spade rose and stood close to the fat man, looking down at him, and Spade's eyes were dark and hard. He raised his glass. His voice was deliberate, challenging. "Here's to plain speaking and clear understanding." The fat man chuckled, and they drank. The fat man sat down. He held his glass against his belly. His both hands smiled at Spade. He said, "Well, sir, it's surprising, but it well may be a fact that neither of them does know exactly what the bird is, and that nobody in all this time, in all this wide, sweet world, knows what it is, saving and excepting only your humble servant, Caspar Gutman, Esquire." "Swell." Spade stood on one leg, apparently one hand in his trouser pocket, the other holding a glass. "When you've told me there'll only be the two of us, you know." Mathematically correct. The fat man's eyes twinkled, but his smile spread. "I don't know for certain that I'm going to tell you." "Don't be a damn fool," Spade said patiently. "You know what it is. I know where it is. That's why we're here." Well, sir, where is it?" Spade ignored the question. The fat man bunched his lips, raised his eyebrows, and cocked his head with a little to the left. "You see," he said blandly, "I must tell you what I know, but you will not tell me what you know. That is hardly equitable, sir." No, I don't think we can do business along those lines." Spade's face became pale and hard. He spoke rapidly, in low and furious voice. "Think again, and think fast. I told you that punk of yours, that you'd have to talk to me before you got through. I'll tell you that you'll do all your talking today, or you're through. What are you wasting my time for? You and your lousy secret. Christ, I know exactly what that stuff is that they keep in the sub-treasury vaults, and what good does it do me? I can get along without you. God damn you. Maybe you've got to get along without me if you'd keep clear of me. You can't now, not in San Francisco. Now you'll come in, or you'll get out, or you'll do it today." He turned with an angry, headless toss of a glass on the table. The glass stuck to the wood, burst apart, splashed its contents and glittering fragments all over the door and the floor. Spade, deaf and blind to the crash, wheeled to the front of the fat man again. The fat man paid no attention to the glass's fate than Spade did. Lips pursed, elbows raised, and the head clock a little to the left. He found and maintained his pink-faced blandness throughout Spade's angry speech, and he maintained it now. Spade, still furious, said, "And another thing, I don't want—" The door to Spade's left opened. The boy who had admitted Spade came in. He shut the door, stood in front of it, with his hands flat against the flanks, and looked at Spade. The boy's eyes were wide, open, dark, and with wide pupils. Their gaze ran over the Spade's body from shoulders to knees and up again to settle on that handkerchief, whose maroon border peeped from the breast pocket of Spade's brown coat. "Another thing," Spade repeated, glaring at the boy. "Keep that gunsel away from me while you're making up your mind. I'll kill him. I don't like him. He makes me nervous. I'll kill him the first time he gets in my way. I won't give him an inch. I won't give him any kind of break. I won't even give him a chance. I'll kill him." "Timper," Spade laughed crazily. He crossed the chair on which he had dropped his hat, picked up his hat, set it on his head. He held out a long arm that extended to a forefinger pointing at the fat man's belly. His angry voice filled the room. "Think it over. Think it over like hell. You've got till 5:30 to do it. Then you either are in or out for keeps." He let his arm drop, scowled at the bland fat man for a moment, scowled at the boy, and went to the door through which he had entered. He opened the door. He turned and said harshly, "5:30, that's the curtain." The boy, staring at Spade's chest, repeated the two words he had twice spoken at the Belvedere. His voice was not loud either. It was a bit bitter. Spade went out and slammed the door. And that, my friends, is the end of chapter 11. We will pick up the story again on Thursday night with chapter 13. This has been Indiana Homes. Love to you all, and good night.
Please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notifications button. Thank you very much.